today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Part of what I didn't mention to tomorrow was that back some years ago now, the DEC, when also funding the prisons, was funding an education program, a statewide education program that was on invasives, that was based out of Cornell, and I was very involved in that. So I'm kind of glad to come back and talk to you all. It's been it was a good project, and I enjoyed working with you and getting to know you, and so this is kind of fun for me to come back. So some of you will have seen a lot of this presentation in the past. I have to figure out how to make it. There we go. But I don't think it hurts to say it again. So one of the things that I have found in my role at the Northeastern IPM Center is that a lot of people will say to me, we don't do IPM. And I'll describe their process and I'll say that's IPM. And they say, oh yeah, I guess we do IPM. One of the examples I've used is hydrilla in Cayuga Lake. So one of my messages is that you do IPM. And one of the other things, and so maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but this can maybe give you language to speak to people who say those things to you. And I guess the other thing I want to talk about is just the networks that you can tap into through the Northeastern IPM Center. And so these are some of my major messages. You do IPM, whatever you call it. It is an integrated pest management strategy that you use. There's a huge opportunity to work with a lot of different people and agencies and institutions that can benefit you. And I know you do a lot of that already. And that I want to emphasize that IPM does not start or end with pesticide application. That's part of it, but not all of it, for sure. Some definition that we use, it's science-based, sustainable decision-making process. It's a process. Uses the pest biology, environmental data, and technology to manage pest damage. And we aim to minimize economic costs and risks to people, property, the environment. And I know that's, you know, critical to your core to your mission. So some of the controls include determining the pathways, you know, of introduction and spread, doing prevention, monitoring, determining thresholds of concern, of risk, and timing, mechanical controls, cultural controls, biological controls, and if necessary, chemical applications, but the right ones at the right time in the right amount. One of the, what do you call these? Well, anyway, USDA uses this in the National IPM Roadmap, PAM's approach to IPM prevention, which is key to everything. Avoidance, monitoring, and then suppression is their terminology for it. And it's easy to remember, PAMS. And David Lane, our evaluation specialist at the Northeastern IPM Center, had a lot to do with this presentation, and that quote was one that he likes a lot. I like it too. We kind of developed this image to help people understand that it's a continuing process. It's not just one time. You don't just walk into a site and say, oh, there's this pest, so we're going to do weed pulling, or we're going to apply pesticide or whatever. It's an adaptive management process where you monitor, you look at what's coming because you're checking regional pest reports and mapping. You know what to look for. You're looking at weather forecasts. Is it favorable for a certain pest? And you know what your risk thresholds are. You know, if it's something like, let's say, garlic mustard. It's not toxic. It's not good. It is invasive. It goes into disturbed areas. But you know, if there's 3 or 4 plants, it's fairly low risk, and you can use it. You you tailor your management to that risk tolerance and risk threshold. You apply your controls based on all of that. You definitely keep records. And I heard you talking about that today. You evaluate how effective it was. And then you keep monitoring and you keep going through this process, and you know that you do that. And so it's not just an annual process, it's an ongoing process. Invasive species, IPM and invasive species, and so many of the pests that we're looking at are invasive species, particularly with natural areas and agriculture, but they're not all invasive. There are native pests as well. But basically, IPM address pests in agriculture, any kind of managed outdoor areas, natural areas, housing, schools, other structures, indoor pests. And they can be invasive species like brown marmorated stink bug, spotted lanternfly, or native species such as the black-legged tick. The plant or animal diseases are included in pests, and they can be native or non-native. Swine flu or lake blight are examples. Invasive species are non-native to the new ecosystem. They're likely to cause harm and then need, IPM action. And actually, you can think about IPM starting at beyond the borders of our country and our continent, and kind of narrowing down as the pest makes it through the screens. And this website has, of course, a lot of information and definitions of Forest Service. Prioritize risk prevention. We definitely look at what the risk threshold is, and the risk benefit analysis is very important. So there's potential damage or human health issues from the pests, but there are risks from the treatment, and there are potential monetary costs from the treatment versus no treatment. So you have to think about, well, what's the risk tolerance? What's the risk threshold? And that leads to being able to prioritize what kind of management method you're going to use and when you're going to step in to do that. So in Ithaca, for example, the spotted lanternfly infestation that was discovered last fall by an observant grad student in Cornell entomology, were egg masses on trees that were around a parking lot up near College Town, just at College Town. And those, so it's a densely, it's in the city that it gets dense, and there are a lot of apartments, and it's really close to Cornell, the Cornell boundary and fraternity houses. So there are a lot of cars going in and out, and the ag markets and other people who surveyed it after the alert said there were 10 or 12 different states represented on the license plates in the parking lot, and many of those would have gone through quarantine areas or areas where the spotted lanternfly is established. And so it wasn't a surprise. And they did a lot of surveying and then started taking trees down early this year. Pretty much they're just taking the trees down. And as they take them down, they search for egg masses, of course, but they have found more and more egg masses. They may be finished with that tree removal, but that's an example of if we remove these trees, if we remove this infestation, we may be able to control it early on. So just an example of how to think about, wow, this isn't just a few adults or a few nymphs. These are a number of egg masses, and we can see that they came in on people's cars probably, and so we're looking at something that's going to be established and spreading fast. And I guess I would call that a mechanical control of the insects, so they'll destroy the trees. And then also the whole IPM network across the country, because you're looking at mapping, you're looking at other people's reports. There's those kind of networks, weather forecasting, those are very important networks. So about the Northeastern IPM Center, as Tammy said, we are one of 4 regional centers that cover the country. Again, we're here to really establish and foster collaborations, networks, education, data sharing. We all do some annual funding of regional projects. We try to do evaluation of how well things are working, how well our work is going, and how well IPM is being adopted and why it might not be adopted. And again, we have a lot of stakeholders in a lot of different settings related to IPM and pest management. One of our programs, which is probably less relevant to you professionally, but I wanted to tell you about it just briefly, is Stop Pests in Housing. This is HUD funded, so it's targeted at affordable HUD housing, and it's structural indoor pests, and it's national. So it's based at our Northeastern IPM Center, but it's a national program. And if you want to know more about it, stoppests.org, or you could just email me, but I just wanted to mention it. We have a bunch of arrows. Does everything. And I also wanted to clarify New York State IPM versus Northeastern IPM Center. New York State, we work very closely together, and we're both based at Cornell, so of course we do. And the Northeastern IPM Center works with all the state IPM programs and coordinators, so we also work with the New York State IPM program. But New York State IPM really focuses on the state level education and applied research, and does a lot more probably direct education and technical assistance than we do. We serve, the Northeastern IPM Center serves the 12 states of the Northeast plus the District of Columbia. So we can't, you know, we can't narrow down to one state. And we're, you know, a big chunk of our work is still building networks and collaborations so that those state IPM programs are more effective. We aggregate information and knowledge and we disseminate it. So that's a lot of what we do. Wanted to throw out a list of the kinds of people, organizations, and institutes that we work with, and there are a lot of them. One of the things that we do that may interest you in particular are these annual partnership grants that we make to stakeholders throughout the Northeast. We have 3 major categories. Usually they're 2-year grants, but sometimes 1 year. And we have 3 major categories: communications, which is basically extension, working groups, which bring people together, and then applied research. And so this is just some examples of the groups that we have funded and that have built networks and collaborations across the Northeast as a result of the funding. And for example, the Spotted Lanternfly Working Group was funded in 2018, and that led to a very large collaboration, but also a very large pot of funding from USDA to work on spotted lanternfly. We're about halfway through that award now. And this also shows a range of the kind of, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, a range of the kind of topics that we look at. This controlling mice in multifamily housing, you know, that gets into our structural as well. So these are just some examples of other projects that we've funded that I think have interest for you all, and I'm pretty sure that this was one of the projects that was spoken about in the NASMA conference in 2019. Bethany Bradley's work on potential shifts in species distribution with climate change. So she got seed funding from us, one of our partnership grants, and has really done a whole lot of work beyond that. She's, published, and I know that you know about her work, but I'm just pointing out that the seed grant with the partnership grant gave her a really good springboard to get more funding. This is another one on the Canada Thistle and the range that we can expect. Again, we funded the project. I'm not sure if they've gotten further. They've done more of the range shift projections. So again, springboard for more funding and more work. Biocontrol is a risk reduction project, and this was focused on swallowwort biocontrol. And they have, this biocontrol is still under research, and there were some presentations on this again at NASMA, and there have been some publications since then, but there was initial funding from the Northeastern IPM Center to get this work going. And then the spotted lanternfly, as I mentioned, was a working group that we funded that led to the USDA funding, and one of the biocontrol measures being researched is this fungus Baccola major that kind of eats the insect. Again, biocontrol and the samurai wasp for brown marmorated stink bug. That there's been 2 USDA funded 4-year projects on BMSB, and the original work was a working group funded by the Northeastern IPM Center, and that's a national that has national participation from universities across the country. Right now, it's led by North Carolina State University, and there's another proposal in the works led by Oregon State. Again, some funding for biocontrol and parasitoid releases. And our RFA specifically is, you can go to this website at the bottom, northeastipm.org/RFA/partnership. And it'll give you all the information that you need about submitting a partnership grant. The RFA usually comes out roughly mid-September, and then we try to get we usually have a deadline of around the beginning of December for submission. It's an online submission, up to $50,000 for up to 2-year projects, and that varies depending on the project. It has to have, any funded project has to have Northeast significance, and much stronger if it has Northeast collaborators and not just one state. Again, the takeaways, IPM is a methodical approach to pest invasive species management, and IPM elements are critical to invasive species management, and our networks can help you a lot in doing your work. So I hope that was useful for you, and that you'll feel free to work with us in the future. One of the things I should have mentioned in here is that we have a couple of news outlets that you can take advantage of. I know some of you are on our mailing list and receive the IPM Roundup, which is a weekly newsletter. And then we have a quarterly newsletter also. So if you wish to be on any of those listservs, please let us know.